Hi,
How are you today?
I'm doing excellent.
Awesome. Me too. How's your week been?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's been busy. Work's a little crazy. I had to do a production yesterday that involved drinking.
Oh,
So it was fun, but it made me sleepy and it made me not sleep well.
oh, I see.
Here
I
we
see.
are. How about you? How's your week?
Good. I finally got my Christmas decorations up, but we can talk about that on the Talk of Shame if we like. Because I feel
Yeah.
like we should do a Talk of Shame today with all that's going on with that United Healthcare CEO getting killed and who they apprehended and all that
Mhm.
good stuff. But first, we have some business to get to with our confession series.
That we do.
Yes. Shall I go ahead and introduce ourselves?
Let the world know who we are.
Okay. Welcome to Forbidden, the podcast where we discuss the disgusting, the dark, and the disgraceful in our unmentionables. Of course, we've slipped into something more comfortable. Hope you're doing the same, listener. Welcome. My name is Amanda Kamada.
And I'm Blake Roberts.
And this is our final installation of our series, Confession. That is our limited series that delves into true crime stories where faith takes a dark turn. We'll explore cases involving religious leaders and spiritual communities that hid sinister secrets behind their holy facades. So join us as we unravel the complex intersection of devotion and deception. Can't
Yeah.
believe this is already our final one. I think I'm a little sad. It's been one of my favorite series that we've done this year.
Yeah, me too, actually. And the
Yeah.
stories have been sort of varied and
Hmm.
interesting.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my references for today, or my sources, I guess I should say, are, as always, Wikipedia, InsideBaltimore.org, the Huffington Post, and I also watched a 7-part series on Netflix called The
The keepers.
Keepers. Yes,
I knew
I
it.
think I think after I gave my 3 hints last week, which were Nunn, Maryland, and Unsolved Murder, that you probably felt like I think I felt like you knew exactly what I was talking about. So I'm excited, but a little bit bummed that you actually guessed it. But let's get started. On January 3rd of 1970, a female body was discovered by 2 hunters near a garbage dump in the Baltimore suburb of Langsdowne, Maryland, in an isolated snowy wooded area. Police were immediately dispatched. Quote, "It was snowing when we got to the dump and cold as a son of a bitch," the detective recalled in the spring of 2004. The body was pretty much covered by snow, but it didn't take us long to figure out who she was. When I walked up on that dump, I said, quote, "Hello, Cathy Cesnik." She was lying on her back on the slope of a little hill with her purse and one shoe a few feet away. That sounds like me on a drunken evening, by the way.
Does.
As soon as they opened the purse, they found a prescription bottle with her name printed on it. Described by students and fellow teachers alike as a dedicated, enthusiastic English and drama teacher, Cesnik had vanished November 7th, 1969, through a brief early evening trip to a shopping center about a mile from the Westgate apartment she shared with another Notre Dame nun, Sister Helen Russell Phillips. For almost 2 months, state and local police investigators had been unable to find a trace of her. Now her body had been found. Her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, along with a blow that had left a round hole in the back of her skull. Today, we are going to talk about the still unsolved murder of Sister Catherine Cesnik. So, a little about Cesnik. Catherine Ann Cesnik was born on November 17th, 1942, in the Lawrenceville neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Raised as a devout Catholic, she attended St. Mary's School and was a valedictorian at the graduation of her high school class in 1960 after being the May Queen. So you may ask, what is a May Queen? It's not a It's not a drag show. It means that she was basically the leader or grand marshal of their local May Day parade. So she must have been very pretty back then, and was the president of her senior class and the student council. So a very smart and studious young woman. But shortly after graduating, she joined the School Sisters of Notre Dame, which is a convent, when she was 18 years old and became a teacher. So, wondering what the School Sisters of Notre Dame is, it's a worldwide religious institute of Roman Catholic sisters founded in Bavaria in 1833, and they're devoted to primary, secondary, and post-secondary education. Their life and mission centers on prayer, community life, and ministry. Sorry, that sounds so boring.
Indeed.
Yeah. But they also not only serve as teachers, some are lawyers, accountants, nurses, administrators, therapists, social workers, pastoral ministers, and social justice advocates, and more. But she decided to be a teacher. So in the fall of 1969, she began teaching drama and English at Archbishop Keough High School in Baltimore, Maryland, a private high school for Catholic girls that opened in 1965. So this was an all-girls school. She was a beloved teacher, almost like a big sister to her students, because she was very close in age to them because they were in high school. She taught English literature and drama, which is why her disappearance, and murder really shook the entire community. On November 7th, 1969, the night that she disappeared, she left the apartment she shared with Sister Helen Russell Phillips at the Carriage House Apartments and went to the Edmondson Village Shopping Center to purchase a gift for her sister, who had just recently become engaged to be married. That night, she also cashed a paycheck at First National Bank in Cantonsville and may have made a purchase at a bakery in Edmondson Village because a box of buns from the bakery were found in the front seat of her car. When she didn't return home that evening, her roommate was obviously concerned and alerted a couple of friends rather than the police. Kind of dumb there, Sister Helen.
I wonder if that's because maybe at that time, especially if you're like in a tight religious community and you don't have a lot of external connections,
friendships and connections. Yeah.
maybe you're just not like thinking like, oh, something really bad could have happened here. It's more like, oh, maybe she got caught up with something at church, or I don't know.
Yeah. Let's call the priests. So around 4:40 a.m. the next morning, Russell's friends, Father Peter McKeon and Father Gerard J. Keough, remember that name, both Catholic priests, found her car muddy and illegally parked across the street from her apartment complex. Residents at the apartment complex noticed Cesnik in her car that night, approximately 8:30 p.m. That was the night she disappeared. And others spotted her car illegally parked across the street about 2 hours later. So remember, it took over 2 months to find her body. And how strange that was that her body was found in a different area, but her car was parked near her complex in this disheveled, muddy state, right? Police suspect that the suspect must have driven the car and parked it after killing Sister Cathy. But what would be the motive for a beloved teacher and nun to be murdered? So police first looked at Father Gerard Keough, who was, as I just said, one of the first people that actually came over to her apartment complex looking for her. And they kind of thought that he may have something to do with it because they found letters that Sister Cathy had written him professing her love and that she wanted to leave the religious life that she had vowed to, along with him, to be together. He first admitted then that they were sexually active, but later recanted that years later. He was never charged with the murder. So it sounds like they had some sort of, if not physical, definitely an emotional relationship. And they found these letters between the two, but they could never connect him to the murder. Most believe it is due to her involvement with uncovering heinous acts that had been occurring at Archbishop Keough High School, where she taught. Police and the press suspected the murder was connected to sexual abuse allegations against a priest at the school named Father Joseph Maskell, as well as E. Neil Magnus, who were sexually abusing girls allegedly at the school in addition to trafficking them to others. At the time of her murder, Cesnik had taken a leave of absence from that Catholic school and was teaching at a nearby public school. The 2017 Netflix documentary, The Keepers, explores the murder and suggests that students' allegations of sexual abuse by the school's chaplain and guidance counselor, Father Joseph Maskell, likely led to Cesnik's death. The documentary questioned whether Cesnik was killed because she knew Maskell was sexually abusing students at the Catholic high school where they both work. A CBS Baltimore investigation revealed many of those victims confided in her just before her murder. Two of those were Teresa Lancaster and Jean Weiner, who were two former students at Keough who claimed that they were sexually abused by Keough's chaplain, the Catholic priest, Joseph Maskell. Weiner said that Cesnik once came to her and asked, quote, "Are the priests hurting you?" Both women had said that she was the only member of the school staff who helped them and other girls abused by Maskell and his peers, and they believe she was murdered prior to discussing the matter with the Archdiocese of Baltimore. So she basically realized that something was maybe going on, asked the two girls about it, and was going to be going to the Archdiocese of Baltimore to discuss this, and then she disappeared. The first public allegations, however, that Maskell was connected to the murder were not made until 1994, well after her death. In 1995, Lancaster and Werner filed a lawsuit against Maskell. The school, get this, the school gynecologist, Christian Richter, the School Sisters of Notre Dame, the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and Cardinal William H. Keeler. The trial court dismissed the action as time barred by the statute of limitations. Now, I would love for someone to help me understand why there was a school gynecologist at this high school. That is so fucked up.
That was real, and it's very specific.
Yeah. A gynecologist, I have never heard, like, I've heard of a school nurse that, you know, if you're not feeling well at school and you have a fever, you go to the school nurse and they'll call your parents and tell them that you need to go home, or maybe you've come with a little bit of head lice or something like that. But a gynecologist on staff?
And you said the name was, it wasn't Christina, it wasn't Christine, it was Christian.
Christian, yes, which means man.
So that's the only time I could see this working is if they also happen to have like a podiatrist on staff.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense.
It makes absolutely no sense. And it opens up the door to obviously sexual assaults. Was there a gynecologist on staff that was giving abortions to these women who may have gotten pregnant, you know, or giving them birth control or something like that? I can't for the life of me figure out why in the world a school would ever need a gynecologist.
Yeah, I wish my school had like a proctologist. I'd have been there.
You're like, I may have been there a few times. I don't know, a day. My butt hurts.
I'm 16. I need to get my colon checked.
Yes. But even though the trial court was dismissed because of the statute of limitations, the Baltimore Sun reported in late 2016 that since 2011, the Archdiocese has paid out settlements to Maskell's victims. So obviously something went on there, because you just don't pay money to people who are victims if something didn't happen.
Right.
Weiner, who was one of the victims who came forward and said that Sister Catherine was trying to help her, she also alleged that 2 months before Cesnik's body was discovered and only a day or two after Cesnik disappeared in November of 1969, that priest Maskell drove her to a wooded site near Fort Meade and showed her the body. She said she remembers trying to repeatedly brush off the maggots crawling on Cesnik's face while frantically repeating the words, quote, "Help me, help me." Her story was questioned by scientific evidence showing that it would have been impossible for maggots to be alive at that time of year. Remember, it was November and a little bit cold. However, Werner Spitz, who worked on the case, later confirmed that there had been maggots in both Cesnik's mouth and trachea when she was found. And meteorological records also revealed that temperatures during the week in question were warm enough for maggots to hatch. The Huffington Post reported that Maskell told Weiner, quote, "You see what happens when you say bad things about people." And so, did she see this body? Was it Sister Cesnik? I think probably so.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. And, being a young high school girl who has likely been sexually abused by that man, if you know that he has killed somebody, you certainly aren't going to run to the police probably or your friends and just tell everybody what happened. But this came out years later after this happened.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So several days after Cesnik's disappearance on November 13th, 1969, the body of Joyce Malecki, a 20-year-old woman who looked like Weiner, was discovered by two hunters in the same wooded location where Maskell had driven her. The murder was never fully linked to the Cesnik case, but there were suspicions that it could be. And her body was even exhumed later in 2023. So keep in mind that this case has been unsolved since 1969. In 2016, the Baltimore County Police Department reassigned the case, prompting new interviews and further investigation into the alleged sexual abuse at Keough Archbishop High School. After obtaining permission from the state's attorney's office, the body of Maskell, who died of a major stroke in 2001, was exhumed but did not find a DNA match to evidence from the crime scene. But police reiterated it does not exclude Maskell from being a suspect in the case. The case still remains unsolved today, 55 years later. They think, when the blunt force trauma, they don't know if it had been caused by a rock, a tire iron. They could never figure out exactly what the blunt force trauma was caused from. But they did say that the hole in the back of her head, they thought might be from a priest's ring that they wear. So that could be something, to the case. But it's really unfortunate that the body, was exhumed and they still weren't able to solve the crime but if you think about it, in the 1960s, the collection of DNA just probably wasn't even a factor back then, quite frankly. And they probably didn't collect enough, around her, in her car, all of that kind of stuff. And that car is long gone by now. But one good thing that did happen is the murder of Sister Cesnik contributed to the 2023 bankruptcy decision of the Baltimore Catholic Archdiocese. So good on you for that. Her death has never been solved 55 years later, and the surrounding controversy not only has been the subject of that Netflix docuseries, The Keepers, but also of an academic study, including the book, The Horror of Police. Again, still unsolved to this day, but that's the story of the murder of Sister Cesnik. I would definitely encourage everyone to watch The Keepers. There's much more information about the cover up and the heinous crimes that went on at that school. The school is no longer open, closed. I don't think too shortly after all of this happened, but certainly there's definitely evidence suggesting that this priest probably very likely had something to do with her murder.
Yeah, that was such a fascinating docuseries. I watched it when it came out, and then I watched it again. And I don't typically do that with it's very powerful and it's very upsetting at times, but it just is so fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it does take you on a sort of a roller coaster because it does start with Cesnik, and then it just sort of unravels with all of the accusations and crimes and abuse that happen, and it's just a crazy story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one that I think about. Like, out of all of the true crime stories out there, this one is probably one of the most impactful on me, for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I just thought,
And I mean, here's the thing too, back then in the 60s, these these girls, I won't even call them women, they're girls, young girls going to this high school, being subjected to these horrible men because the nuns were the teachers and then the men were like the administrators, the counselors, who ran the school and that sort of thing. I can't imagine how scary it was, to be in that environment and wonder, like, am I next? Knowing that maybe, your friend confided in you that maybe something had happened to them, and
mm-hmm,
knowing that your parents might not believe you because of their religious beliefs, and being, usually people who are sent to these schools, their parents are devout Catholics, or you're being sent to the school because maybe you were a problem child in a public school and they wanted to give you, an education with more so a religious upbringing and that sort of thing. And, the punishments may have included that, sexual assault and, those sorts of things. So there's no telling how many people were probably affected by this who went through that school who never even came out. I mean, look at the number of men who have come out who've been sexually abused by, religious leaders in that church. And I think that I feel like the men have had more, exposure to what has happened to them than the women have, which doesn't surprise me because it's the Catholic Church and it's all about men.
right. I wonder too if that's partly due to it's sort of more shocking when it happens to men, right?
Right.
And since the beginning of time, like rape, like sexual assault against women has always just sort of been known,
Yeah.
you know? And it's always been sort of dismissed or rationalized, or
She
uh,
asked for it.
she asked for it. She shouldn't have dressed like that, et cetera, et cetera. Just
Mm,
ridiculous, deeply offensive things like that. Whereas crimes against boys, I think just wasn't, never really, it was like, we don't talk about that.
hmm
It's just like another layer.
And
Uh,
this may have been overlooked too a bit because the girls were a little bit older and they were in high school and that sort of thing, where a lot of the
yeah,
boys were truly young boys, altar boys. I mean, you're not an altar boy anymore by the time you've kind of outgrown that by the time you're in high school and that
yeah,
sort of thing. So, anyway.
that could be. And also, like, if you look back, I think that society now, at least in parts of the world, are more accepting of gay culture or quote lifestyle. So I think it's maybe less of an issue now or going forward, hopefully. But before now, you couldn't, it was difficult to be out and not be ostracized, especially if you come from a religious family. And so what do you do? Like, it's like, I think I've told you the story of I waited to be baptized because I didn't think I deserved it. And then finally I was like, all right, this is my last ditch effort. I hope that when I get baptized, I'm doing quotes again, cleansed, being gay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's because I grew up in a somewhat religious household. But I wonder if that also is what's happening there is, well, since I can't get rid of it, let me take a vow of celibacy. I'll go into the priesthood and I'll do my best to be a good person as a priest.
Right.
We all know repression leads to very bad, dark places.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's probably a lot of that too.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know if there was a boys' school at the same time, in this area. Because usually if there's a all Catholic girls' school, that there's a boys' school as well. And if they
Mm-hmm.
had any issues, with that as well. Would be interesting to know.
Yeah, for sure. That would
Yeah.
be interesting. What if that one was like squeaky clean?
Right.
Everyone had a great time. They were
Yeah.
well educated. No one touched anyone.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I still can't get past that school gynecologist.
That's
It's just
bizarre.
it's just bizarre. I can't imagine.
Was that in the docuseries? Because I don't remember it.
I don't remember it.
Because yeah, that's a head scratcher right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Old gynecologist.
It makes me think of that. What was his name? The guy who sexually assaulted, he was the physical therapist who sexually assaulted all of the gymnasts and stuff like that. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. The US women's team gymnast.
Yes.
And he claimed that his physical therapy, as I say in quotes, included, touching and, basically fingering them and sexually assaulting them and that sort of thing. So you wonder if that was just a way for someone to, like, why would they need to perform those sorts of like procedures in the
Right.
Catholic high school, particularly if they believe Catholics believe in no sex before marriage. Like, why is a gynecologist in there? Makes
Right.
no sense. It's
Yes.
disgusting.
It is disgusting. And I think one of the reasons why this story moved me so much is because of my upbringing. And I don't come from a Catholic household. My family grew up in the Church of Christ, which is, if you're not from the Midwest, maybe you don't know that, but it is sort of similar to Baptist, not quite as what I would call extreme as like Southern Baptist, but still very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's just always shocking when you grow up with these figureheads, right? That you're supposedly you look up to for direction and guidance, like spiritual guidance, and it turns out that they're evil.
Right.
I think that's why, and I'm assuming you had a similar reaction because you did grow up in a Catholic household.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I went to a Catholic school, which I personally didn't experience any sort of, I didn't like it. I mean, I did not like going to Catholic school. I didn't like being forced to go to church. I didn't like to be forced to learn religion. I felt it was really, religion bored me even as a child, like,
Bring a book and not the Bible.
yeah,
So
like
boring.
it's so boring. And just the installation of fear of everything, that church, like you're going to go, you're a sinner if you do this, you're a sinner if you do that. I mean, for me, was just creating a culture of fear,
Yeah.
to keep people in line, which I think a lot of religions do. I'm not going to just say it's like Catholics,
Oh yeah.
but I never experienced, I always had priests that were, to my knowledge, on the up and up, But
Yeah.
like I said before, I think I've said on another episode, I just never felt comfortable around them,
Yeah.
them being men and, in this position of power and stuff like that. And I have to tell you, the time I went to Italy, I went to Rome and I actually went to the Vatican. And although it was amazingly beautiful with the artwork and stuff, like Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel, and I saw all of that. It was also incredibly disgusting to me because it was just such an egregious display of wealth,
Yeah.
where religion is supposed to not be about money, and that's all it's about, and it just, like, I found myself being incredibly disgusted while I was there, all of the gold and all, and I think of, the people suffering around the world, like, what are you guys doing for these people? And you're living in these palaces, and you have all of this, sexual, assault accusations against men and women and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't like organized religion in general.
That's
I'm,
right. It was, yeah.
I think that religion causes more deaths than cancer every year. It causes more wars. I don't buy into it. And yeah, but being raised Catholic, I did not enjoy one bit.
Yeah.
Except for the wine, during communion, the
See,
blood of Christ. I mean, I've been drinking since I was like in second grade.
see, we got imitation Christ because we got grape juice. It wasn't
Yeah,
well.
that is cheap, and
That is disappointing. Even
yeah,
Jesus was like, he was like,
it's
wine.
yeah,
It's so disappointing.
yeah,
I also just feel like in religion, people put a lot of faith into humans, these people that lead, and humans are flawed. Like, humans make mistakes, and that's okay. Like, humans aren't perfect, and we're
Mhm.
supposed to make mistakes, and we're supposed to learn from them, but it's really difficult to put someone in a position of power, and this goes beyond religion. To put someone in a position of power who you're listening to and absorbing, and you're taking everything as fact, or as, I mean, I guess that's it, fact, right? Like,
Yeah, it's a teaching.
it's a it is a teaching, and when you take that at face value, you're doing a disservice to yourself. Educate yourself, question everything.
Yes,
Question everything.
everything.
Yeah.
I feel like the Vatican is just another legal mafia, you
Yeah.
know. And how weird that they're in Italy.
It's a
Birthplace of the mafia.
tradition.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. A grand tradition stands the test of time.
Yeah. So I think you and I are both, you've said before you're agnostic,
Yeah.
and I am too. I think it's not that I don't believe in, it's not that I do believe either, because I just don't know. I guess I'm more of a scientific person, like give me the facts.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated by, like, we're both creative people, and I think we're fascinated by what could be and what maybe is. I'm not so scientific to where I'm like, well, if there's not proof, I don't believe in it, because there's always new developments, there's always new discoveries. So I do think there's more beyond what we know, and I think the idea of, and this is not unique, I'm sure everyone's heard this before, but the idea of God as like the gray-haired man that lives in the clouds is, people try to find like a tangible way to, it's easier to digest, for a lot of
Mhm.
people that aren't creative.
Right.
But I do think that There are a lot of religions that worship a god, and it's their god. But maybe also it's just all the same god. Maybe we're all religion, not all of us, obviously, but maybe a lot of people are worshiping a different god, but it turns out is the same one.
Mhm.
Who knows?
And maybe there's a heaven, maybe there's a hell. I don't really believe in that, and I
I don't either.
certainly I certainly am hoping, like, they'll say, like, when someone dies, like, "Oh, you'll see them in heaven." There's a lot of people I don't wanna see if there's a heaven. What if I don't wanna see great aunt whomever?
Right. I'll be like, how did you get in here?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. They'll probably ask me that more so.
Yeah, I know. We probably will be. You and I will be somewhere else. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll be somewhere in the middle. I don't think I'm, like, bad enough for hell, but
Not
maybe
either.
I'll be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
We'll meet in the middle.
Yeah. That sounds reasonable.
Yes,
Get into
yes.
that.
So this is, kind of our last episode, full-on episode of the year,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will do our talk of shame, which if you're watching this on YouTube, our talks of shame appear only in audio on Spotify and Apple. So we'll do a wrap up there
At the Forbidden Pod.
at the Forbidden Pod, and we're gonna really get into it, talking about things like more religion, fisting, syphilis. Who knows? Where
All
that
the
will
things that have happened to us over the past year, because
fisting,
this
syphilis.
is yeah,
Oh,
90, I believe this will be our 94th episode. So
are we at a full year now?
almost, yeah,
Because we started right before Christmas last year.
we did.
It's
Happy
almost an
anniversary.
anniversary.
Yeah.
We've done a
Well,
lot of episodes.
yeah, we have. And listener, I mean, get in there on Spotify and Apple, especially during your holiday break, and listen to some of the older ones. I mean, they're not as tight as they are now.
Yeah, it was loose.
It was very loose. It was like an old grandma's hoo-ha, but
Loose and dry.
loose and dry. Now we're all tight and juicy.
Bring lube, and by that I mean alcohol, right
Yes.
up in there with your headphones.
Yeah. Head over to our website, theforbiddenpod.com. All of our episodes are there. If you want to take a look at what we've done over the past year, maybe we'll highlight over the next couple weeks, re-highlight some of our better episodes or ones that we've enjoyed or think that you might enjoy or maybe missed. You can follow us on our social channels on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Forbidden Pod. And, since we've been doing this for a year, wish us well, like give us something, rate and fucking review us for
Money.
once.
Or rates and reviews.
Yeah, or nudes,
Subscribe.
whatever you
Nudes.
need to do. We'd like to see you with a Santa hat on your wiener.
I want to see what's in Santa's sack.
Yes, yes. What's in Santa's sack this year?
Is
For
it delicious?
me. But yeah, send us if you have any. We have a great lineup, I will say, coming up in 2025 of topics that we will get into, and really excited we can maybe talk about that more in the next couple weeks, give you some teasers. But if you have any story ideas or have something that you want to talk about, head over to hello@theforbiddenpod.com and wish us well.
That's right. Follow us on social media at The Forbidden Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And again, YouTube if you have not checked that out yet. And I guess that's it. I mean, stay tuned. We'll give a little teaser as to what's coming in Q1, as we say in the business world.
Q1. We're
Q1.
we're just wrapping up Q4.
We are. We're going to go over our KPIs, our ROIs. Well, actually, let's not. I don't have enough tissue.
I know.
We haven't done any we haven't put any ad spend behind this. This has all been organic.
Mhm.
And yeah,
We're
so
here because of you, listener.
We are. It's been a fun year.
And,
We will do a little recap.
yeah,
Let's do a little recap next week.
we will.
Our year in review, our year wrap.
Yes, kind of like our Spotify year wrap that we've been all getting, which I'll get into in the Talk of Shame. Mine was pretty enlightening. I didn't realize how much I listened to Spotify. Holy shit. Well, Blake, thank you so much for listening to my story.
Amanda, thank you for sharing your story. It's one of my favorites. It's nice to hear it.
And still, like, again, people, watch The Keepers. Do it during your holiday break.
Oh, it's a
Binge
great
that.
one for the holidays.
You will binge that shit. It's 7-part series, and it is captivating for sure.
It is my favorite true crime docuseries.
Yeah,
ever.
I think so too. Yeah. And listeners, as always, we thank you.